I'm honored this morning to have joining us a good friend, a gentleman who has been one of the stellar educators, I think, here in the state of Virginia. Really somebody that's passionate and knows the issue of career and technical education probably as good as anybody else or better than anybody else in the state, and that is Dr. Trey Davis. Trey is now the 2018-2019 president of the Virginia Association of Career and Technical Education Administrators. And does a great job there. That group oversees the state of Virginia's public schools, secondary education programs in career and technical education. He is also the director of the Northern Neck Technical Center. Trey has spent a lot of his career, almost entire career, there in the Northern Neck, which is a very, very important part of the first congressional district. And he's seen firsthand what our students need to be successful. Trey is also a Virginia Tech alumni, so go Hokies. But we're glad to have Trey with us this morning to share his perspectives on what we need to continue to do in the Commonwealth of Virginia to make sure that we have a great career and technical education system here in the state. And as I said, he's been at the forefront of that. So, Trey, good morning. Great to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you again, Congressman Wittman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. I hear you loud and clear. So, well, listen, give us a little background. You have quite an extensive background in the things that you've done, both in the education realm and how you have come to where you are today as a leader in the career and technical education field. So give us a little background just so we know how you've kind of formed your perspectives and where you see yourself today and where we need to be going, not just in the Northern Neck, but across Virginia in career and technical education.
Well, it all started back many years ago when I was raised on a farm. So growing up on a farm in eastern Virginia in the Northern Neck, I always have a love for just hands-on, just being very hands-on. I went to high school, and I ended up going to college and a business degree, and I was just really passionate about teaching. And I came back to become a business teacher. I never really got away from my roots of being on the farm or just working in the fields and just doing a lot of small things like that. And so the areas of career and technical education, where it's courses in agriculture or cosmetology, they always were pretty important to me. And actually, my first teaching job was at the Northern Neck Technical Center. So the passion about career and technical education happened really early in my educational career. Spent 23 years now, I guess, in public education, most of those in the fields of career and technical education. Fortunate now to, as you mentioned, to be the president of the VACTEA Association, which is the administrators of CTE, and we're pretty strong in the state. We have a big conference coming up in October where we share a lot of best practices and talk with the Department of Education, and we submit changes. There's a lot of good things going on in the field of career and technical education, and there's a big change focusing toward, and I wouldn't say getting away from standards of learning, which was important. However, it focused heavily on the 4 core subject areas, and we lost a big emphasis on career and technical education over the last 15 or 20 years. I feel strongly about the last 3 to 5 years. The State Department and even the federal is realizing, well, we've missed something here. We've let this lag, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I see administration, I see state legislators heading in the right direction, because we're trying to fill these gaps. And I believe for so many years we emphasized the math, history, English, and science as part of his accreditation for schools, that schools focused heavily on those and really got away from teaching, a lot of the career and technical education. And then the recession hit, not too long ago. And then a lot of CTE courses in the state, kind of went by the wayside because that was not part of the accreditation. So we're just trying to build those areas back where we can actually teach kids skills. And for those students that are not going on 4-year colleges, and even if they do go to 4-year college, they need to be career ready when they do leave college. So a big emphasis on getting bridging the gap between education and businesses, and trying to find a way that, instead of just hobby teaching, as I would refer to it years ago, and then now it's really about getting kids opportunities and letting them know about the career exploration. But as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it. There's a lot going on, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Well, I tell you, you've done a great job there, and you bring up some really important points. Trey, I think that there are three numbers that I always bring up that just fully occupy my attention when it comes to career and technical education. And you talked a little bit about 4-year degrees. And what we see today is a mismatch. You see today as we speak that 46% of college graduates are not working in the area in which they've received their degree. So now you have college graduates that have made this investment, and many of them having to borrow money, having student debt, and then not having a job to go to because the degree doesn't match, as you said, the jobs that are available. So there's that gap there. So that has to be bridged. And I think that those conversations have to happen between students, their parents, and school guidance counselors and others, not in middle school, not in high school, but in elementary school. I think in 4th and 5th grades, the conversation needs to begin about where are the jobs. And businesses need to be part of that. You know, you've all done a great job in these job fairs and connecting businesses so that folks know where those jobs are. But that mismatch, that gap, that imbalance, I think, is critical. And then when you look at the other number, and that is 60% of the new jobs in the future will not require a 4-year degree, but they will require certification or credentials. So as you spoke about, students will have to get that education. So post-secondary education, post-high school education is key. So give me your perspective. You talk about, bridging that gap. You talk about, how do we make sure we have that fabric of an education system that provides our students with the knowledge, skills, and abilities so they can assume those jobs in the future, many of them going unfilled today. I spoke about it earlier, and that is businesses today speak about one single thing, Trey, that limits them in growing. And that is skilled employees to go into the jobs that they have. So kind of give us your perspective on the things we need to do, where those imbalances exist, where the gaps exist, what we do in working with businesses. You talked a little bit about that, but I want to get you to elaborate a little bit more about your ideas about how we build that communication between parents, between their children, with school administrators, with teachers, with the business community, to really elevate this to where it needs to be. And you've started that, but I think we all know we've got a ways to go. Give me your thoughts and ideas about what the next steps are.
Well, Congressman Wittman, I'm going to focus heavily on what we do in my regional center. My regional center has 6 different high schools, 5 different counties, so it's a large area. I'm just going to focus on some of the best practices I think we do well.
Sure.
And the emphasis, and I'm living proof of an individual that came up through the school systems when that same technical center was in my area, and unfortunately, I own a 103-acre farm right across the street from that technical center, and I never walked in that technical center until I actually was employed there. So I'm passionate about the fact that somewhere along in high school, I never knew or had the opportunity to learn about the technical center, and I was pushed toward the college track, and I was taking courses along that way. And back in the day, it was students were placed there, not as much as wanted to go there. So we put a big emphasis on, as you talked about, getting the information to the elementary school and the middle school kids. We do tons of tours for all grade levels, mostly focusing on middle school and high school. And so I think in the next year or so, we're going to try to start taking a little tour to the elementary school. Sometimes getting them in their facility is a little bit tougher, but we can go to them, and we do a very good job of that. And the state has picked up on that. The state of Virginia has picked up on that in the secondary education, the fact that they've put into their what they call profile of graduate, which is the emphasis on promotion and exposure for students to be college and career ready, and the various opportunities out there. And so in the middle school is a focus, and they've given flexibility to local schools to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for them to have opportunities to learn about careers. And so we piggyback off on that. We actually go to them and do little videos and talk about all the different programs we offer. And then they come and actually take a tour throughout the year, whatever's best time for them. And then we focus heavily, obviously, on the high school. Well, we go to them also, give them the spiel, and they come to us, and they actually spend extended times in their classrooms to really learn about the various programs. We've seen a big jump because we have marketed better. We have gone to the schools. We have promoted better, not only with our target audiences, actually the students, but we directly mail at my center all of the high school students that are in the 10th grade to every parent in those 6 high schools, because the counselors are so busy with testing and the many things they have to do. But the counselor doesn't always understand whose parent or whose child has an electricity or their parents are electricians. Mm-hmm. And so going around, unfortunately, sometimes going around the counselors has been an advantage for us. They're our biggest supporters, and they're the ones that help us get the students we need. We want to be there. But it is very important that we promote in the community the Regional Technical Center. And it's been beneficial because we've got 9 out of the 11 programs full for next year. And it has been that way the last 2 or 3 years. And so unfortunately, we're turning away students. But I think it's a big deal because we've promoted. We get the information out to the parents and the businesses. We have a very strong advisory board. And you spoke with that in years past. Mm-hmm. And it's 40, 50 businesses. We have a big dinner in October. And then after our dinner and an hour's worth of it, the individual businesses go back to their classrooms. They meet with students. They meet with the teachers. And they talk about curriculum. They talk about equipment that needs to be. They talk about what's going on in the industry. Now, obviously, this is in Eastern Virginia and roughly the 5 counties that we focus on. But I do believe it's one of the best practices that we do. And as part of the president of the VACTEA Association, we try to share those best practices across the state. And many of these things, don't cost money. They're just, ways to get it out there. We have newsletters, periodic newsletters that we send to our stakeholders, which are everybody from superintendents to board members to our advisory board that has all these businesses on it. And so that the door has been opened wider in my center because we try to communicate with them 12 months out of the year, not just when they try to call me in June when the kids have already graduated and gone. They say, hey, I need some help for the summer. Well, they've kind of missed that opportunity. So we try to educate the local businesses to, please keep the door open 12 months, not just when you need a worker, but just understand that it's important for the businesses, not to mention the schools, to constantly keep the door open all 12 months out of the year, keep the dialogue going. So when they need somebody, we're there and able to assist them and get those students into opportunities, whether it's internships, whether it's field trip opportunities, cooperative learning, or apprenticeships, anywhere you kind of want to set it up. But get them those entry-level jobs. And we focus heavily, I've got a lot to talk about, we focus heavily on those certifications and credentials for those students. So they leave us with OSHA certifications, they leave us with credentials from their particular trade area, whether it's a cosmetology license or a certified nurse assistant license, and it allows them to gain a leg up, obviously, on a lot of the individuals in the local communities because they come with those skills. As you mentioned earlier, 4-year degrees they're good if you have certain areas, but I know a lot of friends also they went to and majored in various majors and didn't use them and then had that debt. It took them years. I was one of those individuals. It took me till I was 32 to pay my college loan back. And even though it got me to where I am today, but I wish I'd have made a lot of better decisions way back then. Financially, I'd be probably better off today. So we're passionate about it at the Technical Center, and I try to share as many of those best practices across the state. And we even periodically meet as regional technical centers once a year, twice a year, sometimes in Charlottesville. And because some of these centers, whether they're locally inside the counties or they're regional centers like me, we do a lot of good things, and we try to share those best practices. And what are you doing, and how is it working? And we try not to reinvent the wheel. We try to make it as simplistic as possible, but there's a big emphasis on just not hobby teaching, but getting these kids jobs and filling those gaps because we hear it, you guys hear it, the community hears it. I hear it daily, multiple times a week. People just looking that just can't find anybody. I can't find anybody to do any work around my own house. I've had to replace all 3 toilets myself. I've had to become a better painter, and I'm not skilled in those areas, but it's really tough to find labor in not just 1 or 2 areas. It's across the board. Electricians are hard to find, and you name it. The trades areas have been hit really hard over the years, and welders, and a strong age population is getting ready to retire. So we've got to fill those spots. So we've got to do a better job of promoting the trades and industry, the career and technical education, and do a little less on 4-year schools. So.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And folks, we're speaking with Trey Davis this morning. Trey is the director of the Northern Neck Technical Center. He's also the 2018-2019 president of the Virginia Association of Career and Technical Education Administrators, and a real leader in the field. And Trey, as you point out, there are lots of great things that are going on, the best practices and things that you're putting in place, opportunities there in the Northern Neck, sharing that with other localities throughout the state. One of the elements that you speak of is how you use your advisory boards to bring businesses together so they understand what the students are looking for, but also so students understand what the businesses are looking for. One of the areas that I know has been a significant challenge is being able to recruit high-quality teachers to teach in our career and technical education schools. So give us an idea about where the challenges are there and the things we need to be doing to make sure we're able to recruit those teachers, because it's an issue across our education system. And are there ways that we can reform the accreditation for teachers in science, technology, engineering, and math, and career and technical education?
I'm going to focus on career and technical education teachers, because there's your core area teachers that have a different, the history, math, science, but I'm going to focus on teachers that we need in the trades areas, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
It can get pretty broad. And so currently, and has been for years, if somebody wanted to teach culinary arts, they would have to have, number one, experience, and then credentials or certifications in their field. We would provide them what they call a provisional license that allows them 3 years to get additional coursework, which is usually 3 courses. They talk about classroom management. It's one of them's instruction, so it helps them get a foundation. And it is tough because many of these individuals can make a whole lot more out in the private sector. And so I focus heavily on, you can see some of the creative ways that I've actually hired some individuals. I have a chef that was a chef at the Country Club of Virginia for 14 years. So to lure him away and talk to him about quality of life and talk to him about making a difference in kids' life was not a big challenge. He was ready for it. But the fact that he's given up a lot of funding, money, personal funding to take this. I also hired an individual from Honda, that's running my auto tech shop. Mm-hmm. He was making a good amount of money, and then he took a pay cut to come work for me, and he loves kids, and that's the number one priority thing is I have to make sure they actually like kids.
Yeah, sure.
That's the number one if you know your skill set. But the paperwork and the process to get them through the door isn't as cumbersome as basically filling the financial gap that it's really tough to find instructors in those areas because of they can make so much more out there. And when you talk about STEM and CTE, if you've got an engineering degree and a master's in engineering, you probably don't get too many. And we're fortunate we have an engineer that's had put in a lot of years in the industry and was looking for some way he could give back. So we've been fortunate to not have any turnover in my staff past year. And we make a lot of fun around there, but it's tough to find engineers with the background and stuff to go into education. And it's no different now when you talk about the core areas. We're losing, even universities are cutting their education departments. It's very painful. My wife's university, Clarion, I believe, up in Pennsylvania, has cut their education department, and Pennsylvania's always been a state where we've pulled a lot of teachers from. Mm-hmm. We don't push out in the state of Virginia enough graduates to fill our needs in the teaching area. And I wish we as a state could put more emphasis on our universities. And my personal belief is I really wish we could find a way at the community college level to come up with a way to offer, entry-level type educational courses to stem the interest of students that are going to the local community college, because I think those individuals, there's so many students taking courses at local community college. If we put an educational emphasis or a pathway where they can go from there and get the foundation courses and to come back and become a teacher at a 4-year degree, I think that's my personal way, as I'd like to see from the national level and if not the state level to put some emphasis on education courses. Right now they only offer like 2 or 3 that are transferable to 4-year schools. So I think that would at least get them in the way from those courses.
Well, I agree.
It's
I
tough
think
to fill my needs.
No, listen, I agree, Trey. I think looking at innovative ways to make sure that we can find early on in the educational experience for students ways to interest them in the teaching profession is really the key. We have just a few seconds left, but I wanted to thank you for also another place where you serve. We have in the 1st Congressional District what we call Virginia's 1st District Career and Technical Education Task Force, and you're the chairman of that task force. I want to thank you for serving on that. You've been very helpful in helping us bring together, as we talked about, students, parents, teachers, policymakers to make sure that we're doing all we can in those fields and address a lot of the things that you had spoken about. So really key for us to be able to continue to address that. So I really appreciate you joining us this morning, giving us that perspective. A lot of really valuable efforts, I think, are being undertaken. I appreciate your leadership there, the things that you're doing, the things that you pointed out this morning. And I encourage our listeners this morning to look at ways, both in your community and here, that we can do even more for career and technical education. So, Trey, again, thanks so much for your leadership. Look forward to continuing to work with you to make sure we are building a great career and technical education program in Virginia.
Well, thank you again, Congressman Wittman. It's been a pleasure to be on the John Frederick Show this morning and to talk about what I'm passionate about, the focus of career and technical education. Thank you again.